Shalom, everybody. Welcome to this week's Journey Through Torah. This week, we start a new book, the book of Bamidbar, the book of Numbers. It's one of those things where when we get to the book of Numbers and you first open it, you see a bunch of numbers and names and all this going on, and you're like, I don't like math. I don't want to do math today, and we kind of skip over the whole book. But there's a lot in this book that is very relevant for our lives because the name of the book really isn't Numbers. Okay, the name of the book is Bamidbar, which means in the wilderness. So we're talking about life in the wilderness. We're talking about things that happen when we feel we're alone. Now, consider a few things. We're going to go through some things like this. Sometimes Yahweh will pull you away from other things, other situations, so that we have that focus on Him. Sometimes we're so focused on everything else in life that we forget what's really important, and Yahweh pulls us back in to refocus on Him and to walk with Him and to reconnect with Him, and it kind of pulls us away from other things to do that. So even in the wilderness, there were these issues that were given. Even within the camp, you had Israel on the outside, but then the closer you got to the tabernacle, the more focus there was on Yahweh, His presence, and discerning the clean and the holy and common, and being set apart and living for Him and doing these things. The closer you got to the Mishkan, even if you were just standard day-to-day life as someone within Israel, but you went to worship and you went to the tabernacle, you would sense that, and you would know that, and you would be aware of that. So even in the wilderness, there was a place that was set aside where Yahweh would meet with Moshe. Okay, and this is something that we can learn from this as well. Do we intentionally and purposefully make time to have relationship with Yahweh when we feel we're in a wilderness? When we feel that we're like, I don't get it, I'm alone, or I'm not understanding, or just different things going on in life. We're in a wilderness. And do we make time intentionally and purposefully to get in the presence of Yahweh? Because you're not alone. He said He would never leave you or forsake you. You're not alone. Even if you're like, okay, but I can't feel Him right now and I'm not really hearing Him or anything, it doesn't mean that He's not with you. Focus on Him and wait on Him. Okay, that's something that we need to continually do. We need to listen to His voice, stay in the Word, continue to pray, continue to do these things. Okay, even Yeshua had times where He would go off to be by Himself, and it wasn't just by Himself; it was with the Father. And so there were times that He would go off into the wilderness and have these things as well. And we see some of this in Matthew chapter 4. Let's look at it really quick. Matthew chapter 4, verse 1. So Yeshua was led by the Ruach into the wilderness to be tempted by the devil, and after he had fasted for 40 days and nights, he was hungry. And when the tempter came to him, he said, "If you are Ben Elohim, the Son of God, then tell these stones to become bread." And he replied, "It is written, man shall not live by bread alone, but by every word that comes from the mouth of God." Verse 5. Then the devil took him into the holy city and placed him on the highest point of the temple. "If you are Ben Elohim," he said, "throw yourself down, for it is written, He shall command the angels concerning you, and upon their hands they shall lift you up, so that you may not strike your foot against a stone." And Yeshua said to him, "Again, it is written, you shall not put Adonai your God to the test." And verse 8. Again, the devil takes him to a very high mountain and shows him all the kingdoms of the world and their glory. And he says to them, "All these things I will give you if you fall down and worship me." And Yeshua says to him, "Go away, Satan, for it is written, you shall worship Adonai your God, and Him only shall you serve." And then the devil leaves him. Behold, angels came and began to take care of him. So notice something here. Yeshua, He took comfort in the word of Yahweh, right? And when tempted, every time Yeshua was tempted, He said, "It is written." And he quoted from Deuteronomy, by the way, when he was doing these. But he said, "It is written." Not once did he say, "Well, I feel that." We addressed this in the Parsha from last week, where it's your covenant relationship's not based on your feelings. You know, some days we wake up in the morning and we don't feel the best. We don't feel the good. You know, it's kind of like, do you feel holy today? I mean, that's not it. You are holy. Yeshua, Yahweh, He said you are holy. He set you apart. You're His. If you feel like it or not, you're in covenant. So live like it. Okay? Don't be led by your feelings. Don't let your feelings be your discernment. All right? Because that will definitely lead you astray. And so, side note, It is often the furthest, most remote places that we can finally hear the word of Yahweh without all the hindrances, without all the distractions, without all the everything pulling us away. We can focus on Yahweh. Guys, this is one of the reasons why Shabbat is such a blessing, because we have the 6 days of the work, you work and the busy and just the day-to-day life and of running the household and the kids and the car and the job and everything else. But Shabbat, it's a time to stop everything else and focus on your relationship with Yahweh and his people, right? It's a time to gather together and bless Yahweh and worship him and to be with him and to get into the word and to have that relationship and community and to have that with it. It's a wonderful, beautiful thing. And it's again, in just everything of the week, if we don't have that, we can lose sight of what's important and to continually push without that reconnect. It's not going to be good for you. You need that reconnect with the Father to be energized and to be strengthened for life that is ahead. Okay, so in the wilderness, don't forget, there's a purpose of the wilderness. And there's showing a relationship with Yahweh in the wilderness. And he's teaching you how to be a people of his presence. He's teaching you how to carry his presence with you wherever you go. It's kind of like when he set them free, he redeemed them, he brought them out of Mitzrayim, and he brought them to the mountain to himself to reveal himself and his word and his heart to his people, to show them, I go with you, not just in the tabernacle, but wherever you go, because once you go into the land, you're not going to have the tabernacle in the midst of your camp. But yet I am with you throughout the entirety of the land. So I carry, or you carry, the presence of Yahweh with you wherever you are. And so this bringing out into the wilderness was for bringing into a place of relationship. And we see this in Hosea chapter 2, verses 14 to 20. It says, I am going to woo her. I will bring her out to the desert and I will speak to her heart. I will give her vineyards from there and the Achor Valley as a gateway to hope. She will respond there as she did when young and as she did when she came from Egypt. On that day, says Adonai, you will call me Ishi. You will no longer call me Baali. So what's the difference between Ishi and Baali? Baali, it's kind of like a formal term. Baal is the word that's a lot of times translated as idols, but Baal is also the word used for master. Baal was also translated as husband. Okay, so Baali would be my husband. So it's kind of like a formal title, right? Ishi, it's less formal. Ish is man, like a man. Ishi is my husband. Or literally would be my man. So that would be translated as husband. So there's a difference of her saying, the bride saying to her husband, calling him husband, and calling him by a term of endearment. And that's the point he's getting at here. It's no longer a formality of relationship. It's an expression of our love for one another. Verse 17, for I will remove the names of the Baalim from her mouth, and they will never again be mentioned by name. And when that day comes, I will make a covenant for them with the wild animals, the birds of the air, the creeping things of the earth, and I will break bow and sword, sweep battle from the land, and make them lie down securely. And I will betroth you to me forever. Yes, I will betroth you to me in righteousness, in justice, in grace, and in compassion. I will betroth you to me in faithfulness, and you will know Adonai. Okay, so he brings them out for relationship, brings them out so that they would truly know this is the one that they serve. This is the one that they were in covenant with, all right? Now, further on, one of the first acts that we see here in the wilderness that's being given here is unity, a census, right? And it's not just the point of so that we know, who can do it. No, this is Yahweh again, putting them in a place of making them come together. And literally he says, lifting them up, lift up their heads is the way it would read, to lift them up to be counted. It's kind of like how we would say, stand up and be counted, right? Well, what are we saying when we say something like that? It means stand up and make a difference, stand up and do something, right? And so here they're taking the census, and so it's teaching them to stand up and be counted, to come together in a place of unity within the body and to follow Yahweh, to live with him and to walk out his ways. So Numbers chapter 2, verses 1 and 2, Adonai said to Moshe and Aaron, let each man encamp under his own standard among the banners, where banners is an ensign, emblem, or sign. The word is be'otot. The Hebrew word is ot, plural of ot. of their ancestral house at an appropriate distance from the tent of meeting. So we are gathering together when we see our banner, our sign. What is our sign? Our ot, our sign that is a gathering place for us. Literally, be'otot levet avotam, and to gather together, the sign of the house of their fathers. So what is the sign we are given we are supposed to gather under? Here's one thing for you. Isaiah 7:14 says, therefore Adonai himself will give you a sign, will give you an ot. Behold, the virgin will conceive when she has given birth to a son. She will call his name Emmanuel. So we are to gather together under this sign that Yahweh has given us. And that's our unity point. That's our coming together, a sign and a banner. Okay. A sign and a banner. It's similar terminology here. Different words are used though, right? So this is the sign and the banner that is to given for that coming in. So we see in Isaiah 5:26, it says he will lift up a banner. Nes is where it's used there for banner. Nes also means miracle. So he is to lift up a banner to nations far off and whistle for them to the ends of the earth and look swiftly, speedily they come. Who is this banner that is lifted up that we're all going to come and gather to? That is the sign that was given to us. So speaking of Yeshua, guys, this is what it's talking about here. Speaking of Yeshua, we see in Isaiah chapter 11, verses 10 to 12, it says, in that day, there shall be a root of Jesse, which shall stand for an ensign, will stand for a sign of the people. And to it, the Gentiles, the nations will seek, and his rest shall be glorious. And it shall come to pass in that day that the Lord shall set his hand again the second time to recover the remnant of his people, which shall be left from Assyria, and from Egypt, from Patros, from Cush, and from Elam, and from Shinar, and from Hamath, and from the islands of the sea. And he shall set up an ensign for the nations, Nes Goyim. He will set up a sign for the nations, and will assemble the outcasts of Israel, and gather together the dispersed of Judah from the four corners of the earth. And again, this is Yeshua we're talking about. That is our gathering point of gathering together to the Father as one people, right? We gather in Yeshua. We don't gather under any other purpose. It's not what denomination are we. It's whose do we belong to? You know, who are we in covenant with, right? Isaiah 18:3 says, all you inhabitants of the world and dwellers on the earth, when the banner is raised on the mountain. Look, when the shofar is blown, listen. So what is this banner that is going to be raised for us to see? Again, Yeshua, when he said, when the Son of Man is lifted up, he will draw all men to him, right? So we're learning we are one people, like Israel. We're one people, but they had many tribes within Israel. They all had their individual identity. They all had their own uniqueness, but together they were one people. So they identified as a people, a body, which kind of puts the question to us, are we willing to be part of a body? When Yahweh has called you to be part of his people, and what happens if we can't get along with anybody else? Are we truly walking in unity? Are we truly, learning the heart of the Father? Maybe sometimes Yahweh puts you in situations with difficult people to work you over, to perfect you. Maybe not, but maybe so, right? And there are some times, I'm not asking you to put yourself in dangerous situations or abusive situations or anything like that. Not at all. But what I am saying is in every situation that you experience in life, are we submitting that to Yahweh and seeing what he wants us to do about it? And if we have anything to do in it that's not upright, righteous, holy, we can correct that, right? So again, we need to learn to be people of a body, and we need to learn to bring unity and to bring peace. Some people don't want peace. You can't help that. But scripture does say, with as much as it is up to you, live at peace with all men. You can live at peace with people, even if they don't want peace themselves. You can have it. Okay. So we're talking about family bonding in the wilderness. Psalm 68:17 says Yahweh is among them, as in Sinai in the holy place. It says Adonai bam Sinai be Kodesh. Literally Adonai in them, Sinai in the holy, in the sanctuary. So literally what we're reading here, it's not just Yahweh is among them, it's Adonai in them, and Sinai, the sanctuary. So the idea here is that when we come together as a body of Yahweh, we're acknowledging him and his ways. We are working ourselves as kind of a sanctuary for his presence. And the scripture follows that up. Don't you know that you are the temple for the living God? You are the place for the Holy Spirit to reside. He lives in you. And so when we come together, it's him we need to acknowledge. in the midst of all of that. Okay. So Hirsch puts it this way, and it says, sorry, I need to slow down here. Plus my seeing is kind of small here. I have my screen. So excuse me. Lemishbechotam levet avotam. So he's to gather by the families and the house of their fathers is what we're looking at here. Okay. So individual members do not form the national congregation directly and immediately. The all-comprising national congregation consists of two concentric circles. The congregation is formed by tribes, and in every tribe by families, so that the men are to be counted in their belonging to the family, and the families belonging to a tribe. And the numbers contained in each tribe added together to form the sum total, Adat B'nai Israel, to form the sum total of the congregation or the assembly of the sons of Israel. The individuals first group themselves into families, the families into tribes, finally the tribes and the higher union of all originating from one common house into the house of Israel. From their spreading out from the one common stem, the tribes are called matot, branches. Okay, and from the various families belonging to the common branch, the original family home, so that one Beit Israel, one house of Israel, consisted of the 12 B'tei Avot, the house of their fathers. So again, the idea here is you're an individual who is part of a family. The family is part of a tribe. The tribe is part of the nation. You're one body, right? And we need to learn to function as one body. And the things that we do don't just affect us and just our family. It affects that reaching ultimately to the nation of people called apart and set apart by Yahweh. Romans 12:16-18. says, live in harmony with one another. Do not be proud, but associate with the lowly. Do not be wise in your own eyes. Repay no one evil for evil. Give thought to what is good in the eyes of all the people. If possible, so far as it depends on you, live in shalom with all people. So again, the idea here, if you're to ask people today, who is Israel? The answer would not be the 12 tribes, but rather say, so who is Israel? They would say like, okay, we have the ultra-Orthodox, the Orthodox, traditional conservative, reform, the secular right, the secular left, all of these things, right? Maybe, just maybe, we need to see beyond all of that and to see all who have entered into covenant with Yahweh are part of his covenant people. See that? That's a better way to look at it, I think. Ephesians 2:12-13 says, at that time you were separate from the Messiah, excluded from the commonwealth of Israel, strangers to the covenants of promise, having no hope and without God in the world. But now in Messiah Yeshua, you who were far off are now brought near by the blood of the Messiah. So in Messiah Yeshua, that which you were far off from, you were brought near to. Well, what were you brought near to? And people would say, well, brought near to Yahweh. And yes, you'd be right. But what specifically does he say? Keep it in the context. You're far removed from these things. Now in the Messiah, you are brought close to these things and to be a part of these things. So what are these things? Commonwealth of Israel, covenant that has promise. In the Messiah, you now have hope. So all of this working together. And if you ask many people today, okay, so you follow Yahweh, what is your relationship with Israel? They see no connection. But understand, if you are a follower of Yahweh, if you are in Messiah Yeshua, you are a part of Israel. You are not replacing Israel, but you are joined with Israel. And we need to see that. Remember, Yahweh says, I will bless those who bless you, curse those who curse you. He said that to Abraham and to Yitzhak, to Yaakov, and Yaakov's sons, we're talking about Israel. All right, Galatians 3:28-29 says, there is neither Jew nor Greek, neither slave nor free, there is neither male or female, for you are all one in Messiah Yeshua. If you belong to the Messiah, then you are Abraham's seed and heirs according to the promise. See that? In Messiah Yeshua, you are heirs according to the seed, heirs according to the promise, the seed of Abraham, because the covenant that Abraham had with Yahweh was a covenant of faith and coming to him in faith. And it's the same today, guys. How do we come to Yahweh? We come in faith. Romans 11:16-18. It says, if the dough offered as first fruits is holy, then so is the whole lump. And if the root is holy, then so are the branches. But if some of the branches were broken off, and you, although a wild olive shoot, were grafted in among the others, then you now share in the nourishing root of the olive tree. Do not be arrogant toward the branches. If you are, remember, it is not you who support the root, but the root supports you. In Romans 12, verses 4 and 5, it says, for as in one body we have many members, and the members do not have the same function. So we, though many, are one body in the Messiah, and individually members of one another. See that? If we are in relationship with Yahweh, we are in relationship with Yeshua, that we are members of one another. We are part of the body of Messiah. Ephesians 4:22-25 says, put off your old self, which belongs to your former manner of life and is corrupt through deceitful desires, and be renewed in the spirit of your minds, and put on the new self, created after the likeness of God in the true righteousness and holiness. Therefore, having put away falsehood, let each one of you speak in truth with his neighbor, for we are members of one another. Okay. Now we're going to kind of go and end this with a theme that we kind of started with, right? Bamidbar is the name of this parsha. So we have in the beginning of this book, in the beginning of the book of Numbers, Bamidbar literally reads in the wilderness. I want to show you and experience some things that words are important. A lot of things we see in this book is we see a lot of rebellion. We see a lot of discontentment. And we see a lot of this being expressed. And so in the wilderness, we have choices to make. We have just been given the word of Yahweh. Are we going to walk in it? Are we going to live it? Or are we going to do our own thing and let our feelings and emotions run us and walk contrary to Yahweh because of them? We need to be careful, not just how we think, but the things that we allow ourselves to say and influence others as well. Remember, words are important. Okay. Bamidbar is the ba is means in, and midbar is the word for wilderness. So Bamidbar is in the wilderness, midbar. But midbar can also be read as medaber, which means in speech. And if we break this down a little more, we can read it this way: ba is in, and then the min is from. The var is speech, but what is a beit as well? A beit is a house, right? So in the house from speech. Let me put it this way. You live in what you build. You build your house by your words. The things that you say, the things that you speak, you are building what you live in, your situations, your mode of life, how you view things. You are doing this by your words that are expressed, the words that flow from within you, from your heart. You are expressing how you're going to do things. Once you speak them, you reiterate them, and you're reinforcing these thoughts with yourself and others. So you're going to live in what you speak. You know, the words that you say will be returned to you. So make them sweet, make them good words. And there's many expressions of the word davar, the Hebrew word davar. Kind of like there are, one Hebrew word can have many different forms and have many different expressions and meanings for one word. Few examples of this. We're going to go through this really quick. First off, we have John chapter 1, John 1:1 and John 1:14. In the beginning was the what? The Word. The Word was with God. The Word was God. And it's that Word that became flesh and dwelt among us. So the Word that's there. Words are important. The word of Yahweh especially is a word created, right? Yahweh spoke and said, and the Word created. He created the heavens and the earth. And I mean, it's just amazing the importance of the power of your words. How many people in their lives today are still hurt and have emotional issues and sometimes physical pain just from words that have been spoken to them in their childhood or over them throughout the course of their life? Words are important. We can use them to build up or we can use them to tear down. And we need to make sure that we are speaking good things and building up the body and speaking these things, okay? Davar means words or even the things that proceed from our mouth or words. Davar can also mean matters or daily tasks. Like a davar is a thing or a matter. We see in Exodus 5:13 and 19 regarding that, matters or daily tasks. Can also be translated as deeds. We see that in Jeremiah 5:28. Customs, as in the custom of the king. The word davar is used there in Esther 1:13. Even the Ten Commandments. Literally, it's not the Ten Commandments. Now, on the other side of that, everything that Yahweh has given to us, is it a suggestion? No, but literally it's Aseret HaDvarim, so the 10 words. the 10 words that are given to us, or the 10 things or the 10 matters that are given to us. Dever is a plague. Dever is a plague or pestilence. Interesting that translation. But again, think about this. We read in Proverbs 26:2 says that a curse causeless will not come. So again, that idea of, so what causes the curse to come? It is a dever, or a thing that causes the curse to come. So again, it does somewhat fit there. And then we see in Jeremiah 14:12 says, I will consume them by the sword, by famine, by the plague. Dever is what's used there. Also, subdue or destroy is also the same root. Lehadvir is given there in Psalm 18:47. And in Micah 2:12, the flocks that are seen in the midst of their hidavar, the same word davar that's used there, in the midst of their fold or in the midst of their pasture. And one last one I want to bring here is in 1 Kings 6:14-16. We referenced this a little earlier, but I'm going to bring a little more to this. Solomon finished building the house, and the inside of the walls in the house he built with boards of cedar. The floor of the house to the joists of the ceiling, he covered them on the inside with wood. He covered the floor of the house with boards of cypress. The 35-foot back portion of the house he built with boards of cedar from the floor to the joists, and reserved this part to the house to be a sanctuary. That word sanctuary is lidvir. Lidvir is the sanctuary, the especially holy place. That word davar is what's used there. Now, bringing this all together, Ephraim Frank did a really neat job of kind of encompassing these variations of davar into a thought. Okay, and so how did he do this? Put it this way. So in summation, the word as epitomized by the son of Elohim is life-giving, but rejecting him, the davar, may result in a plague, dever, which subdues and drives, madir, one to the desert, Bmidbar, there to be spoken to, daver, by the living word, davar, who uses the word of truth, davar emet, in his inner sanctuary or the holiest place, davir. You see that? Let me do it without the insertions. In summation, the word as epitomized by the son of Elohim is life-giving, but rejecting him may result in a plague, which subdues and drives one to the desert, there to be spoken to by the living word, who utters the word of truth in his inner sanctuary or the holiest place. Now we're back to how we started in the beginning, that even in the wilderness, there was a place that was set apart. So even though it seems like we're in a wilderness, we're in a wasteland, there was a place, a sanctuary in the midst of that, where the presence of Yahweh was, where we could go and to spend the time with him that we needed to there, to be refreshed before him, to worship before him, and to have a relationship with him, and to hear his heart, and to hear his words, and to learn to walk in his ways. And it was all there in the midst of the wilderness, without the hindrances of everything else that's going on in the world. Now, here's another issue. Like we said with Shabbat, do you consider Shabbat a wilderness? No, it's the 6 days that is the wilderness. The 6 days is the tough and just the harshness of life and the heat and everything and just all that. But in the Shabbat, that's the tabernacle in the midst of the wilderness. That's the time where we see and we pursue the presence of Yahweh and we search after him. So as we go through this book, Bamidbar, don't focus on the wilderness, because that we see a lot of problem with that. It says Israel focused on the problem and their circumstances and not seeing that Yahweh is delivering them in the midst of all of this, right? So don't focus on your circumstances. Focus on the relationship with Yahweh and his presence there with you in the midst of all that. And that will make all the change in the world. Okay. Well, guys, that's all I have for you today. I pray this has blessed you and encouraged you, challenged you a little bit too. And if this has been a blessing to you, then please share it. Whatever avenue you watch or listen, please share these to help get them out there. If it's blessed you, it's probably going to bless somebody else too, right? And if this has blessed you, then please consider making a donation. Whatever avenue you watch or listen, please consider making a donation to help us continue making these videos and putting them out there so that we can continue declaring the word of Yahweh and touching hearts, touching lives, helping to make disciples, right? From people who we may not have physical face-to-face contact with, people who may not have another way to get the word other than some things online. Help us out with that. Okay. So if this has been a blessing to you, share it. And if this has blessed you as well, then please consider making a donation to help us continue putting these things out there. Okay. So until next time, be blessed, be a blessing, and shalom.